Chapter 1. The Weight of Small Losses. From the perspective of Song Ji-hun, there's a certain kind of tired that doesn't show on your face. You can still smile through it. Still laugh. Even joke a little if the moment allows. But deep inside, it's like dragging a suitcase with a broken wheel, scraping through each day, pretending it's rolling just fine. That's the kind of tired I carried with me. Not just in my bones, but in every word I said, every glance I cast to avoid seeing what I had become. I lived with my mother. Not because I wanted to, at least not in the way a son should. I lived with her because I had nowhere else to go. Because she hadn't yet given up on me, though she probably should have. She still made breakfast. Still kept my clothes clean. Still left a little cash on the table now and then, pretending it was change I had forgotten. And I still pretended not to notice. That morning was like any other. A gray drizzle outside the window. The rattle of pots in the kitchen. My mother's voice, too soft to be angry but too tired to be calm. She asked about work. I mumbled something non-committal. A lie, probably. I don't even remember which one I told. What I do remember is the tension in her voice when she reminded me it was Jia-young's birthday. My daughter. That name still cuts through everything. She lives with her mother now, and her stepfather. I wasn't exactly banned, but I knew what it meant when they started meeting me at public places instead of letting me come to their home. I had become a shadow visitor, a kind of seasonal presence. Still, I wanted to get her a gift. Something meaningful. Something to show her that I remembered. That I still tried. But trying costs money. And I had none. The horse track smelled like burnt coffee and old ambition. I recognized the faces there. Men with eyes too bright for their years, clutching betting slips like prayers. I was one of them. Always had been. I borrowed money, of course. That part was routine by now. Smiling at the loan shark, signing with a thumbprint instead of a pen. I lied about what I'd use it for. Said I needed it for food. Maybe medicine. He didn't care. I watched the horses line up. Picked my numbers like they were lottery wishes. The bell rang. The crowd surged forward, their hope rising like a collective breath. And somehow, impossibly, I won. For a moment I was rich. Not rich. Just rich enough to feel like I could breathe without guilt. I laughed too loudly. Spoke too fast. Told myself this was the turning point. But life has a strange sense of humor. And I always seemed to be the punchline. I didn't even make it out of the building before someone bumped into me. A careless run-in, I thought, until I reached for the envelope and found nothing. My winnings. Gone. I chased. Yelled. Even threw a punch, though it missed. They were gone by the time I reached the stairs. Only later did I find a thin envelope in my jacket. Slipped there in the chaos. I opened it. Just a few thousand won, barely enough to buy a meal. And a small business card. Simple. Minimal. The kind you'd forget if not for the odd symbols on the front. A circle, a triangle, and a square. No name. No logo. Just shapes. I shoved it into my pocket and forgot about it. For the moment. That night, I met Jia-young at a chicken place near the station. She smiled when she saw me. That smile, pure, easy, it broke me in quiet ways. She didn't care that the gift was small. A keychain toy, one at a claw machine. But I knew her mother would. Knew this wasn't the life they wanted her to see. She told me she liked the gift. I told her I missed her. Neither of us said what we were really thinking. Then her stepfather arrived. Polite. Formal. Distant. And just like that, the evening ended. My daughter left with another man's hand on her shoulder. I watched her go, standing under the yellow glow of a flickering street lamp. It started raining soon after. I didn't move. That's when I met him. The man in the suit appeared like a phantom. Clean lines, polished shoes, and a presence so calm it made the chaos around us feel louder. He sat beside me on the subway platform bench, holding a briefcase and a knowing look. "I'd like to play a game with you," he said. I blinked. What kind of game? He pulled out 2 folded squares of paper, brightly colored. A children's game, dokji, we called it growing up. You throw one paper square at another to flip it over. Simple. If you win, I'll give you money, he said. If you lose, you pay. In a different way. I didn't ask what he meant. We played. Again and again. I kept losing. With each failure came a sharp sting, a slap across the face. Not cruel, just mechanical. Like part of the rules. I winced, laughed nervously, and kept playing. Eventually I won. Just once. But it was enough. He handed me a crisp 100,000 won note. Real money. I stared at it. He handed me the card again, the same one I had ignored. Same shapes. Same mystery. If you need more, there's a place. I didn't ask what kind of place. Didn't need to. I just nodded. Days passed. Nothing changed. My mother's medical bills hung over us like storm clouds. The loan sharks returned, angrier this time. My daughter's move overseas became more than a threat, it became a plan. I stared at that card for a long time one night. Then I picked up the phone and dialed the number. A voice answered. Calm, flat, male. They told me to be at a certain street corner at midnight. No luggage. No questions. When the van pulled up, I climbed in. The inside smelled like plastic and sleep. I remember sitting back, breathing slowly. Then, darkness. Sleep came suddenly. Like someone had flipped a switch behind my eyes. I awoke on a bunk. Metal, cold, unfamiliar. I was wearing green. So was everyone else. Chapter 4. Sugar and Shapes. From the perspective of Song Ji-hun. I had returned willingly. It's strange how quickly fear can fade when it's replaced by desperation. Fear is loud and hot and quick. But desperation, real, deep desperation, moves quietly. It waits. It knows you'll come back on your own. We were all back. Or most of us. Different people now, though dressed the same. We still wore the green tracksuits, still had our numbers stitched over our hearts like reminders of a choice we couldn't unmake. But our eyes had changed. The dormitory looked the same, yet it felt colder. The air heavier. The walls closer. The towering bunks no longer felt like sleeping arrangements. They felt like cages stacked on top of one another, built not to comfort us but to hold us in. The men in red were the same. Masks still blank. Hands still gloved. They watched, silent, carrying out instructions written by someone we hadn't seen. Someone who never spoke to us directly. But we followed because the alternative was worse. That morning they gave us food. A simple meal, bread, milk, a hard-boiled egg. People ate without speaking. There was no appetite in it. Just a need to fuel the body enough to survive the next unknown. We started noticing things. Patterns. Whispers. The way some people grouped together. The way others stayed apart. Trust was a luxury none of us could afford, but some of us needed it anyway. I found myself drifting toward familiar faces. Sebayak, the girl with the watchful eyes and secrets hidden in every pause. The old man, 001, who smiled like a man who had nothing left to lose and had made peace with it. And Sang-woo. He didn't talk much. But when he did, he spoke with the tone of someone used to being believed. We didn't call it an alliance. Not yet. But we started looking for each other. And when the next game was announced, we stood closer than we had before. They led us through a winding stairwell, painted in bright, surreal colors. Pastel pinks and soft blues, like something from a forgotten children's show. But the angles didn't make sense. The stairs crisscrossed and folded, leading us in loops that felt designed to confuse more than guide. We climbed in silence. Eventually, we reached a new room. Inside, rows of metal tables. On each table, a round metal tin. The voice came again. This time, the tone was cheerful, almost whimsical. We were told we would each choose a shape. Circle. Triangle. Star. Umbrella. Simple enough. But no one moved at first. We felt the trap, even before we saw it. Still, one by one, we walked up and picked our marks. Sang-woo chose early. I hesitated. I asked him what he thought. He paused, looked at me, then told me to go with the umbrella. I trusted him. I shouldn't have. They handed us each a tin. Inside was a round piece of something amber-colored and delicate. A thin, flat candy, the kind kids used to buy on the streets after school. Pressed into the candy was the shape we had chosen. The rules were simple. Using only a small needle, remove your shape. If the candy broke, you failed. We weren't told what failure meant. But we knew. Not with our ears, but with our bones. I sat at the table, staring down at the umbrella. It looked harmless, beautiful even in its simplicity. But the edges were sharp. The candy cracked easily. My hand shook as I began to trace the shape. Around me, others worked in silence. You could hear the scratching of needles, the shallow breaths, the occasional soft crack. Each one was a warning. The umbrella was the hardest, I realized. Sang-woo had known. He hadn't said. And that small betrayal echoed louder than a scream. I was sweating. My hands slipped. My needle faltered. Then something occurred to me, some half-buried childhood memory. I bent my head, brought the candy close and began to lick. Slowly, carefully, letting the heat and moisture soften the edges. It worked. Others noticed. Some copied me. Some didn't. Some didn't have time. The game ended with a soundless bell. We stood. Those who remained. The rest were not with us anymore. But no one looked down. No one said their names. That night, the money in the glass orb grew again. It glowed brighter, heavier. We all watched it. Some with hunger. Some with shame. Some with both. Back in the dormitory, a change came over the room. Something had shifted in the silence. We were no longer just strangers trying to survive. Now we were competitors. And some had begun to realize that survival wasn't just about playing the games. It was about who you trusted, who you didn't, and what you were willing to do in the shadows between games. That night, the lights dimmed earlier than usual. Someone whispered that it wasn't safe anymore. Someone else started sharpening a toothbrush. I lay in my bunk, staring at the ceiling. The old man was already asleep. Sei Byok sat nearby, eyes open, unblinking. Sang-woo didn't speak. He just sat on the edge of his bed, head down, hands clasped. I didn't know who to trust. But I knew this. The games were only one part of it. The real danger was what came after.